In this video, we'll have a look at how to create some more complex NURBS objects using additional editing tools, the planer tool, the extrude, and then the bi-rail tool. So let's start here by creating a curved surface. So I'm going to select the point curve tool here, and I'll just create something like that. Now if I wanted to create a NURBS surface that has this general shape and is flat, now I would need to use the planer tool. But the planer tool works on closed surfaces, which this at the moment is not. So if I select this curve, then go to Edit Curves, Open Close Curves, you can see right here. I'm going to choose that, and it will create a closed curve based off that. I can always go back, do the same thing to open it back up, but right now we want it to be closed, so I'll do that. And now that I have a closed loop, I can select the planer, and if I press 5 to shade the view, you can see that I've created a NURBS surface based off of the curve that I had sketched out. Alright, I'm actually going to go ahead and delete that, and then I'm going to select this curve, and I'm going to open it back up for now. So that's a very simple way of getting a nice end cap on an object that has an open end, or just anything like that where you need a simple plane in a given shape. Now let's look at two methods of creating geometry along a path. So I'm going to create another curve here. So let's go ahead and go to my front view. And again, I'm going to go to curves and create a curve here. Start as close to the origin as I can get. And actually, let's undo that. I'm going to turn on my grid snap so I can start right at the origin. And I'm just going to drag out a pretty simple shape here. So just use a few points to create another curve. So now what I can do is I can extrude one curve along another. So in this case, I want to extrude this curve along that shape. So let's select the curve, and then the second curve that you select will be the path that you want to take. And I go ahead and click the extrude button. You can see that it creates an extruded shape, though it's a little bit weird. So let's have a look at some of the options that we have for this. So here you can see is our extrude one. You can see that the extrude type is tube. Now I can also go distance, which is just going to give me that little distance right there. You can also choose flat, and that's going to make that curve directly follow the given path. And for the most part, that's going to be the one that you'll think of when you're using the extrude tool. You want that curve to just kind of directly follow the path. Now, like any other NURBS editing tools here, I can select an object and do edits on an initial curve, and it will affect the finished geometry. So for example, if I select this curve and decide I want this to be a closed shape, I can go up to Edit Curves, Open Close, and when I close it, it will also close the extruded geometry that I'd created. So that's a good way that you can take a single shape and make it follow a path to create a surface. So here, let's create a different set of curves that will work well here too. I'm going to use the arced curve tool here. Let's turn on my grid snap, and I'm going to select a point here, and I'm going to make kind of a shallow arc for this one. So there you can see I've created a nice shallow arc between those 3 points, and it is a portion of a complete perfect circle here. And depending on where I put these points, you can see it will draw out the radius and give me that. So there's one arc. And what I'm going to do right away is take this one and duplicate it and drag it up. And I'm going to set it up to an even amount. So let's set it up to 6 there. Okay. And now I'm going to go to where I can see my side view here. And I'm going to create another set of arcs. So let's go down from this point to that point and over to that point. And I'm snapping these even though they're not aligning yet. They will here in a moment. So I'm just going to move that out to there. Okay. And I'm going to duplicate that and move it out to there. So now I have nicely aligned points here. So I could just go back here and use the simple bi-rail. So if I go to my surfaces and bi-rail, and I select this, and then I select 2 sides, you can see it's going to arc up, but it's not taking into account this 4th arc here. So if I want to include that and get more control over how this surface terminates, then I need to put those together. And for now here, let's just take this one and move it back out of the way, so we'll see here. So now what I'm going to do is perform a different option. So I'm going to go up to bi-rail under the surfaces menu, and there's also bi-rail 2, so if you have 2 profile curves, and then there's bi-rail 3 if you have 3 or more rail curves. So I'll select by rail 2, and it'll tell me to select my profile curves. So I'll select 1 and 2, and then select my rail curves, 1 and 2. You can see that's created nice, clean geometry. Now, once you have this kind of four-sided bit, it's important to note that you can actually go in the other direction here. So let's go ahead and drop that tool. I'm going to go up to, again, Surfaces, by rail 2, and I'm going to select these two side curves as my profile curves, and then these two. And depending on the way that your geometry works, this can make a real big difference on the ending shape. So here, I'm going to take this one here and move that out so that we can see them all pretty evenly. And then I'm going to select these curves here and go to Edit Point. And I want to go to Edit Point on all 4 of these because I'm going to edit the starting and ending points here. So let's select this point, this point, this point, and that point, which is actually, those are actually 2 points in each place. I'm going to turn off my grid and then pull these back, and you can see the difference that I'm getting between these two curves, even though they're using the same rails. And here, before we go any farther, I'm going to go over and select this one here, and let's go Edit, Delete by Type, History. Now that won't be tied to this other one anymore. So let's go into these two here and go to Edit Point and Edit Point. And what I'm going to do is kind of simplify my geometry here by selecting every other control vertex and deleting those. And now, again, I'm going to go up here and go to Edit Point there and Edit Point, Edit Point there. So now I have all 4 of these. And let's switch over to the top view really quickly here. So I'm going to select also the alternating ones here. And this isn't going to affect my finished surface on my NURBS surfaces, but it will affect the finished look of the curves because now I'm dealing with simpler surfaces. So those and those. Use my move tool again and pull those back. And you can see here, once again, the big difference that's happening between the curve that uses one set of curves as the rail versus the one that uses the other set of curves as the rail. So now I can go in and further edit this to increase my continuity. And let's take this one here. I'm just kind of deepening the curves here. And as I get these closer to being even again, I'll actually get something a little closer to the 2. But notice that the one that uses the top and bottom as my profiles then sweeps out much more at the top and bottom of the actual shape. So just some things for you to look at, work with, play around with. Editing NURBS like this is challenging, but I encourage you to keep up with it, and as you do so, you'll start to find this a very useful tool in your modeling arsenal that will allow you to create nice, smooth, continuous surfaces that are very clean and very precise.